Українське незалежне радіо.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Real Estate Podcast, Real Estate Trends here on Ukrainian Independent Radio. This is first episode of 2021. And like every other Thursday, I'm trying to bring interesting guests and we talk on different topics about real estate. And today I'm super excited. I have a very special guest. His name is Daniel Kwak. He's a real estate investor. He's got a YouTube channel. If you look up on the YouTube, you're going to find a lot of content. You can find him on Instagram. He also wrote this book that I bought also on his website. You can go to kwakbrothers.com. You buy it. It's free, and there's a lot of cool stuff here. I learned, I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I don't buy as many books anymore because it's, I kind of feel like I know a lot. But I learned a lot in here. So we're going to unpack. We're going to talk how he scales his portfolio. We're going to learn some tricks and stuff like that. So Daniel, thank you so much for tuning in.
Hey Oleg, it's good to be here.
Thank you. So let's maybe begin with, let's start with how you got into real estate and why did you decide to, that the real estate is the industry for you?
Yeah, so I immigrated to the United States when I was 5 years old, and the way I got into real estate is actually a really funny story. So back when I used to live in Korea, which is where I'm from, South Korea, I loved the sport of basketball. So this was during the 90s, and I had an older cousin that played basketball from his high school, and so I'd go watch him play, and I'd watch the Korean Basketball League. And when we came to America, my family, I was very sad. It's a 14-hour flight from Korea to Chicago. And I was so sad because I thought, my friends are all gone, my family's all gone, and I'm not going to have basketball anymore. There's no basketball in the U.S., so I was so disappointed. And so I get off, and during the 90s, they used to have these big box TVs. They were very clunky, they were very big, and they would hang on the corners of the gates at the airport. So I get off, and it's literally, like my first couple steps in America, and I look up, and there's a guy playing basketball, and this guy was 6'6". He was from North Carolina, and he wore number 23 on the Chicago Bulls. And I was like, you know what? That guy is my new favorite player because that's the first player I saw when I came to America. And I later find out it's Michael Jordan. And so I became a diehard big Bulls fan ever since then. And so fast forward when I'm 17 years old, I read the biography of the man who owns the Chicago Bulls, a guy named Jerry Reinsdorf. And I always wanted to meet him. He's, and I read his biography. But I learned that he made his money in real estate. And so I was like, I got to invest in real estate if I want to one day own the Chicago Bulls. So he started investing in real estate when he was 29, I think. He was in his late 20s. And, I was 17, 18 years old at the time. So I said, oh, man, if I can start now, I'll have a head start, on Jerry Reinsdorf, and I'll buy the Bulls 10 years sooner than he bought it. So that's kind of how I got interested in real estate. It's how I learned about it was through the Chicago Bulls owner.
What was your first deal?
Yeah, so my first deal, I didn't do my first deal until I was 23 years old. So I started learning about real estate when I was 19. So when I first started, I actually had negative $187.65 in my bank account. I had a couple of maxed out credit cards, and at one point I actually found myself eating out of a dumpster. So it wasn't good. Life was hard. It was very difficult. And so, I started learning about real estate, and, I wasn't a lazy kid by any means either. I would study every single day. I would go to different, networking events that were around the Chicagoland area about real estate. And I'd study and I'd study and I'd study and I study, but I made no money at all. And so I got very frustrated. So, for me, I'm a follower of Jesus. And whenever I get frustrated, I talk to God. And I said, God, why am I not making any money? I'm smarter than everybody else in the room when it comes to real estate. I worked my butt off. I studied every single day. I know a lot, but why can't I make any money? And God said, pretty much long story short, that you're selfish. You're only thinking about yourself. And he brought me to this passage in John chapter 13 where, Jesus washes the feet of his disciples, and it's an act of humility. And, God pretty much told me, it says, you have a great mind, but a lot of your people will have dirty feet. And so I started talking to people about, hey, how can I help you? How can I serve you? What are some of the biggest obstacles you have in real estate? And by asking that question, I actually got connected with investors, I got connected with individuals who wanted to buy properties and eventually sellers. So I met a guy who was wanting to sell me his portfolio of single family homes. And that was my first deal. I bought 4 single family homes and I was still in college at the time. I was 22 years old, 22, and I did my first deal. So I bought 4 single family homes as my first deal.
You still have them? You sold them?
I do actually. I still do have them. So
nice.
I've been trying to sell them for quite a bit. Well, I've been trying to sell them for about 6 months now, but because I'm doing much bigger deals, so it just makes more sense for me to sell the smaller ones I have and kind of just move on to the bigger ones.
Yeah, I watched a lot of content that you have on YouTube and different podcasts that you've been guests on, and I know you focus on multifamily.
Yeah.
You're here. You're also local, just for listeners. You are somewhere in west suburbs, right? Like Aurora.
I am. Yeah. I'm in Warrenville, Naperville area.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like you have one of the quotes in your book that in order to achieve $1 million, you need to help 1 million people.
Yeah.
Also like you find deals. You don't focus on properties. You focus on building relationships. Those are really cool. Quotes that they're important. It's a bread and butter of how to. Okay, I see now. Let's start with meat and potatoes. Here. So, book is 0 to 75 properties. Catchy name. That's cool name. It's catchy. You want to read it. How do you do it? How do you do it in 1 year? So let's talk about something you talk about in the book. Force strategy. Yeah. So what is this? What is the force strategy?
What is the force strategy? Yeah. So by the way, it's not a strategy where you're forcing anybody to sell the property to. Yeah. You're not using any, means of weapons or anything like that. But my brother and I, ever since we came here, the first movie we watched when we came to America was actually Star Wars. So we grew up big Star Wars geeks. We love, we used to get sticks from the backyard and we used to pretend like we were Jedi Knights. And so we loved Star Wars acronyms growing up. And so when we started talking about, the strategies that we used and what we did, because, when we were starting out, we had no money, no credit, and, we didn't have anybody in our network. My dad was a preacher, so I didn't know anybody who was rich or, who could help me out. And so we had to kind of do it on our own, really from square one. So looking back, my brother and I kind of talked and we were like, well, let's see, what did we do? We found properties. All right. And we bought them through owner financing because we couldn't get loans from a bank. We had to have the owner finance us. We raised the capital, because we didn't have the money. Well, let's see. We also made the building cash flow by making sure we managed it properly. And we also focused on scaling. We focused on expanding our empire. So we kind of, toyed around. We're like, well, that kind of spells out force. It's like, in the movies, the Star Wars movies. So we decided to call it the force strategy. So what it is, it's, you're finding the property, you negotiate owner financing, you raise the capital to get the deal done, but you make sure you also cash flow the property as well by making sure that good management structure is in place, that you're managing the buildings well, your tenants are happy, and also expand the empire. And I talk a lot about in the book how a lot of real estate investors, they focus on doing deals, but they don't focus on building a business. And that's what people really need to start shifting their mindset on, is actually building a business. So that last letter, E, is equally as important as learning how to find deals, raise capital. It's equally as important as every single one of those letters.
Right. So you're doing owner financing, right? So we're gonna talk more about the owner financing. I know a lot of our listeners, they're not familiar, and a lot of sellers are also not familiar with it, right? So a lot of sellers don't even know how to do it, and probably all of them are scared of it, right? What if the buyer doesn't pay, stuff like that? What if he destroys the property and gives it back to me, destroys, stuff like that? So we're gonna dive deep into how to properly structure, how to talk, and you actually pretty nicely describe how to find deals here. You got 3 ways of finding deals. You talk about how to structure it, how to talk to sellers properly, so they take you, so you're like professional. They take you seriously, and stuff like that. But we're just gonna quickly unwrap it for our listeners. So your 3 ways of finding deals. You talk about calling for rent signs, which is pretty cool. I actually did that last year. I tried.
Nice.
I was just I had an investor who was in multifamily, but nothing on the market. I think price is so high right now. You gotta go somewhere off market. So I started calling, even for myself. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll find someone. And I actually bumped into one guy, but a bunch of my calls were like, oh no, they hung up. They say, don't call me. No, I'm only looking for a renter. And but I got lucky with one guy. We're still in talking, but nothing happened. You got to do a lot of it, so you can't just make five calls and. So what are the other things, like call for rent signs? What do you talk? What do you tell them? What is your strategy?
So obviously, in the book, the theme is, I talk about it a lot, is building relationships. So I'll build relationships with people like property managers. And I always tell people, whatever problem you have, there's ways to reverse engineer it and have ingenuity, and be innovative. So, my big problem was that, if I start calling brokers and realtors, the prices are going to be too high. And there's no way I can compete, with the guy who's been doing real estate for 20, 30 years, who has millions of dollars in his pocket. So what can I do to get the deal first before any of those big guys take a look at it? So, it all goes back to solving people's problems. So I remember I was with the property manager, he was a friend of mine at the time. And, I was talking to him and I asked him the question, what are some of the things that I could do to help your business? Like if I had a magic wand, and I could solve any problem that I can for your business, what would it be? And the property manager says, man, I would love to have a superpower where none of my clients ever leave my business. Like if I manage 150 units, those units always stay with me. And the only direction I have is to expand and go up in unit count. And so I came up with an idea and I said, hey, next time your client wants to sell, why don't you have them call me and I'll buy the building and I'll still keep you as a manager.
Cool.
So you're guaranteed to never lose business because I'm going to buy it.
Nice.
And so the guy was, and so he loved that idea. So that's actually kind of how I bought my first 2 or 3 apartments.
You get a lot of relationships with the property managers. You're constantly adding them. Yeah. Yeah,
so I try and build relationships with everyone. So I'm actually investing in a new area right now. So I don't do deals in Illinois anymore.
Yeah.
Just because we're looking to expand, and so we do a lot of our deals down south. But one of the first things that I'll do when I start investing in a new place, and whether it's Illinois or Indiana or Kentucky, right, I'll build relationships with banks. Because the reason being is that it's so easy to build a relationship with a bank because they want your business as much as you want theirs. So I'll start calling up banks and I'll say, hey, I'm looking for a legit bank to work with. I want to build a relationship with a bank I can trust that has good programs. And I'm genuinely looking to do so. But a habit that I created for myself, and whenever I connect with these individuals, I'll always ask them at the end, hey, what are some good people for me to connect with? I'm looking to buy some buildings. I'm looking to build a portfolio here, whether it be attorneys, property managers, landlords, who are maybe wanting to sell their property. Would you know anybody around that criteria that I could potentially meet and connect with? And so banks will usually connect me with 2 or 3 people. And before you know it, I'm connected with 15, 20 individuals, that are landlords, attorneys, property managers. And, I'll find all sorts of ways where we can collaborate and create a win-win.
That's smart. I remember you on the other podcast, you told the host that when you called for rent sign, you asked, do you want to sell? If you don't want to sell, you want to buy? Maybe you want to buy more. If not, if you don't want to buy more, maybe you're going to join my meetup group.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's actually, I remember one time I made a cold call, to one of the sellers, and he said, I didn't want to sell. And I asked him, maybe you have something else you want to sell. And then, boom. Yeah, actually. So sometimes it might happen, sometimes not. It's just one more step, right?
That's right.
One more step always. Just don't hang up until you get one more question. Maybe there's another one around the corner. Yeah, but okay, so you call for rent signs, property managers, and then meetups. Meetups a little bit harder now with COVID, so it's a little bit different game now.
Absolutely. Yeah, by the way, I wrote the book pre-COVID, so please don't bash me.
Yeah. So yeah, again, the book is free. All you gotta pay is shipping. Yeah, it's a easy read. It took me 2 nights to get done.
Good.
Pretty good. Also, wanted to ask you, when you get, let's say you call somebody says, okay, maybe I would sell, I don't know, what's it worth? Every seller says, what's it worth? So you never know. You can really tell them what it's worth. And there's a lot of, older sellers getting to the point of selling. Big thing for them is if they sell, they're going to have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
They bought it a long time ago, 30 years ago for 30 grand. Now it's worth 600,000 or 700 for a 6 flat or 8 flat. It's a lot of gain. There's a lot of taxes waiting for them, and they Maybe they want to pass it over to their kids, so they don't want to pay taxes. But they would actually like that, idea of maybe passive cash flow, or maybe getting the money, but the taxes are stopping them from selling. So they usually, I for some reason I find them, they're not concrete sellers. They're like, I don't know. So well, when you get to the point when you meet the seller, do you tell them right away I want to owner finance? How do you?
No, so I actually create a scenario where it's actually their idea and not my idea.
That's smart.
So here's what you got to do. I always tell people you got to win before you play. So think about the Super Bowl, right? If in American football, obviously, and obviously football in every other part of the world is soccer, right? Because it's literally a foot and a ball. But I love American football. Think about the Super Bowl. By the time that the Super Bowl, even before the game even starts, the NFL has already made revenue on commercial space. They've made money on ticket sales. They made money on on branding, on halftime. I mean, they have so many ways of generating revenue even before that first kickoff. So I always tell people, win before you play. So for me, even before I talked to these sellers that I targeted, I already knew that owner financing was a great option for them. Because, well, I reverse engineered, right? So we got to reverse engineer again, opportunity to be innovative. So I knew that the bank wasn't going to finance me. So owner financing was my only option. So the question I asked myself after that was, well, if I'm going to do owner financing, who are the people that I can help the most by owner financing? And then that led to another question is, well, what are the biggest problems that owner financing solves? Well, it solves 3 problems. The first problem it solves, you already mentioned it, is taxes, and not just the capital gain, but, people who own their property for a long time, they've got that depreciation recapture. They're almost at that 27 and a half year, or perhaps even over that 27 and a half year basis model. And so they're probably paying ordinary income tax on everything they've depreciated year over year. So number 1 is taxes. Number 2, is deferring any other liability, any debt that they have to pay off, right? Number 3 is also the lifestyle. A lot of landlords that I met who've owned the building for 15, 20, 30 years, a lot of them, they want to continue to receive that check. They've gone so long by having the money come in. So I knew that, if I can find people who wanted to continue that lifestyle, who wanted money coming in every single month, maybe they don't need a whole lot of money right now. And also people who want to help defer their taxes or help with to reduce their tax liability. I knew those 2 criterias. I knew I had to find a lot of individuals who were more seasoned, right? Or AKA older. I didn't want to use the O word, but I knew we had to find those type of people. So I reverse engineer. All right, how do I find older landlords? So that's how I found out, calling for rent signs and newspaper ads and, building relationships with property managers, because I can then target. So I knew even before negotiating with that person that I had an edge. I had an advantage because a lot of what owner financing can do for an individual, I'm already talking to the person that has those problems that need to be met by owner financing. Yeah.
Do you buy only properties that need value add, or no? Or just it doesn't necessarily?
Yeah, I know that's a big popular strategy right now. A lot of big real estate syndications and REITs, they love buying these distressed multifamily. They raise the rent, they increase the value, and then they'll refinance out their investors. So for us, that's not something that we're doing necessarily right now. So we're actually more focused down south. We're focused on a very unique area. Now, obviously, this area I can't disclose for the protection of my investors, but we're actually more focused on developing because this area actually is very experiencing huge growth, and not a lot of investors know about it. So we're so more focused on development, and also we're focused more so on Class B properties, that don't need too much in maintenance or repair. So a lot of investors do focus on value add, but it's so tough because when you do value add, there's a certain price point you have to come in at, and right now, these prices are really high.
Crazy.
They're crazy. I know I talked about in the book, 24 unit building that's worth only $750,000 that got sold for 1 point, and that was 2-3 years ago. I can't imagine what the prices are like today with, the Federal Reserve buying up, the balance sheets and even private securities. Oleg, I would not be surprised if in 2021, the Federal Reserve starts buying real estate. They've already started buying corporate bonds. They've already started buying private securities. They own over 22,913 different securities. It would not shock me if they started buying real estate. So, the market's being propped up right now. My friend Dave calls it Mickey Mouse money because it's artificial, because it's fake. And absolutely, I agree with that. Look at the stock market, the real estate market. It's crazy.
Think they're going to drop?
I do think so, yeah. The amount of people right now that I see that, that we're seeing record highs in median sales prices. I think according to Redfin and Zillow, we've seen a 14.6% increase in the median sales price year over year compared to last year. And we thought last year was high. But at the same time, we're seeing people, unemployment still high. People aren't able to pay their mortgages. You're seeing landlords left and right who want to evict their tenant, but they can't because of the moratorium. If you look at the landscape, if you zoom in through the microscope, the American people are hurting. There's so many people who are hurting financially, yet we're still seeing the housing market at record highs. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why. Why is it that the delinquency rate is the highest in 40 years? They haven't tracked it. They started tracking it in 1979, and so chances are it's the highest it's ever been in our country. And yet, the median sales price. And here's that not a lot of people mention. I know a lot of people bring up, well, the houses are so high because of the low inventory. Well, another thing that nobody ever mentions is that, well, during a pandemic, no one ever wants to make a huge financial decision. A lot of times people during times of volatility, people start becoming scarce. They start spending less and they start saving more. But, again, we're in a unique situation because a lot of people are saying that cash is trash. So, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of balls in the air right now.
Yeah. A couple months ago, I got an idea, these eviction bans that you can't file an eviction, but they're going to start coming out and there's going to be a lot of them. If there's a way to buy these lists and go after landlords that are tired of, tenants that are not paying, there's some out there. I try to dig and start looking, but can't really find a way and can't really see the companies that's selling those lists. But that's going to be a niche. Somebody's going to start tapping into the eviction, records, because that's going to be those landlords that are tired. Older landlords, they're going to say, okay, this unit has been so empty for so long, I'm tired. I don't want to fill it anymore. I just want to. And that's when somebody with a creative financing steps in, still provides a passive income. And I remember your first deal when you bought from the guy who was facing the court. He didn't even want to go to the court. You bought it from him. You help him with that, and you got a good deal. How do you structure it?
I think I mentioned in the book. The guy was wearing a Rolex Submariner 2, which he was not hurting for cash. It was just more so his time. Yeah.
How do you structure these owner finance deals? What do you do? Like 20% down or 10% down? What do you do? Just give me a little terms.
Yeah, so it all depends on what the seller wants. A lot of people ask me, Daniel, how do I structure deals? How do I do this? And truth be told, the reality of the situation is in real estate, the answer to 99% of your questions is it depends. Because I'll give you two scenarios. Because what if you got one guy who's 35 years old who he wants more money down because he wants to be able to go out and do the next thing, the next business venture, and he doesn't care about the monthly payment because he's already making good money. But, he wants 30% down, 2% interest on a 25-year amortization, versus you got the guy who's 70 years old who, he wants that higher monthly payment because he doesn't want to work anymore. He wants to travel with his wife. He wants to spend the golden years, doing more charitable work and whatnot. For that guy, you're going to give him 5 to 10% down. You're going to give him 4% interest, 5% interest, and you're going to give him, 25, 30-year amortization. So the way you structure deals is so different for every individual. One of the things that I wish that real estate investors were better at is learning how to be entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. There's so many real estate investors who don't know how to be entrepreneurs. What are entrepreneurs? I talk about it in the book. An entrepreneur is just a professional problem solver. If you can ask good questions, if you can listen to somebody, and you can, and I have a method for asking good questions. It's in the book. It's called the goals method. My good friend Levi McPherson wrote that portion of chapter 12. But I asked the goals method. What are your goals? What are your obstacles? What actions have you taken? What have you learned? What are your lessons? And what are the solutions that you think will help you, overcome those obstacles? So it depends on what the person wants to do, and it's just up to you as the artist to figure out what's in your arsenal to structure the deal for them. Yeah,
right. That's a big key. Listen, listen, and So you do like 25, 30-year amortization. Do you refi them or you just keep going as long as the seller wants?
So I know that's a big thing that everyone likes to do nowadays. They love to refinance, They love to refinance. So I say, I don't think refinancing is a bad thing. For me personally, my investment philosophy is, I'm not a big fan of refinancing. There's actually very few scenarios where I actually will refinance a complex. A lot of people ask me, well, why is that, Daniel? Why don't you refinance? Don't you want the cash? Don't you want that? Well, I would actually argue right now, my money in real estate is more valuable than cash today. Especially right now where cash is trash. The Federal Reserve just set a new target for their inflationary rate to 2.5. So, for me, I want to keep my money in real estate. And plus, my investment philosophy is, I always do something that the version 10 years from now will thank me for. Right. So so I'm 26 right now. I'm still a young man. I have long ways to go. I have much to learn. But if I can do something that 36-year-old Daniel or 46-year-old Daniel is going to thank me for, then I'm going to make that decision. I'm a long-term investor. I like my career to go this way and not that way.
Yeah, delayed gratification too. That's something you also put in the book. That's pretty smart. You put any down payment on these owner financing when you structure them?
Yeah, I do. So in some cases, obviously, like the 8-unit building you read in the book, I put no money down, which, I'm not going to say no to. But, if you're right, for sure.
Can't lose.
But, right, you can't lose, But a lot of sellers, in my experience, they do want you to have some skin in the game, just for security's sake. And I understand that, and there's a lot of things I put in my contract to make sure the seller feels safe. And that's my objective. I'm not looking to take advantage of anybody. If I can create a win for that individual, hey, that's a win for me, So I'll put in stuff in my contract like that. I'm subject to an inspection every 2 years, an inspector of their choosing to make sure the property stays in tip-top shape. We put in some collateral in there as well to make sure that they feel comfortable. But a lot of sellers, if they need a down payment, I'll typically do about 10% down. That's typically my go-to.
Which you can also borrow.
A down payment.
Which you can also borrow, right?
You could, yeah, absolutely. You could raise the money for that.
Yeah, there's no bank, there's no middleman, nobody can dictate. So as long as he gets the cash, he gets the cash. So that's pretty much, you can't lose, right? With owner financing, is there any downside?
Yeah, the only downside I foresee is if you negotiate an interest rate. So one thing I've observed with a lot of individuals who, are not as proficient in constructing owner finance deals is they'll say just because it's owner financing, they'll say yes to a 6% interest rate.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. You know what I mean? You want to make sure your note that you draft up between you and the seller is still competing with the bank. I had sellers who told me, Daniel, I want a 6% interest rate. And I'll tell them, look, it doesn't make sense for me to do 6% because I'll get 4.5% from the commercial bank down the street. Mm-hmm. So why would I do 6%? When owner financing is actually helping you more than it's helping me, because with owner financing, you're saving money on taxes. You're getting a monthly payment every single month. Who are the richest people in the world? It's the banks,
Right.
and you get to position yourself as the bank in this situation. So for me, I see it as helping you as much as you're helping me. So one of the biggest mistakes that people make and the downside of owner financing is, a lot of times they'll negotiate a very high interest rate, like 6%, 7%, especially right now, when in all reality, they could have actually got better terms going to the bank.
Right. Okay. So you get what? You put a little bit down payment. You negotiate. If there's a way to do a zero, you do a zero because that's good. If not, then maybe 10%. Usually you don't go over 10, right? Probably around 10.
Yeah, I've done 13.
Yeah.
I've done 15%. But again, it's just what the owner has the appetite for.
And so, just for listeners, because probably most of us we don't understand what it is. Who guarantees, or how does that done professionally? Is that attorneys drafting all these things and making sure?
Yeah. So since this is a Chicago Ukrainian radio, in the state of Illinois, we call that contract for deed or agreement for deed.
Yeah.
So if you have a proficient real estate attorney who is very good at drafting up documents, as beyond just a standard repsy, it's going to say on the top agreement for deed or agreement for purchase.
So you don't get a deed, you get agreement for deed?
Yeah, so it's agreement for deed. So I know they recently changed the law, and I tell people, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a professional, please consult, an actual real estate attorney. But I believe they changed it to where, it is for deed, and there is an official title exchange when you do buy something on owner financing now. Back when I used to buy a lot of buildings in 2017, the title exchange actually didn't occur. So if you looked it up on the county records for the state of Illinois, you would actually see that if you looked it up, you would actually see the previous seller as still the seller. If you look up the county tax assessor's office, but I believe it changed. You have to consult an attorney on that one.
Another quick question: if the seller has a mortgage, let's say the property is $1 million, the mortgage is $400. Is it possible to do it or no?
You can, yeah. So there's two options that you could do. So the first option is to make sure that your payment that you make to the seller is going to match or go beyond the payment that the seller makes to the bank, right? So it's just saying, hey, I won't, you don't have to worry about your mortgage anymore. I'll take care of it. Another option you can do is you could do what's known as a subject to with the seller carryback mortgage. So the subject to is acquiring the property while the owner's name is still on the mortgage. You control the property. You'd handle the mortgage for them, the payment itself. And then once the mortgage is paid off, then you immediately go to an owner financing note on the back end. So that's why they call it seller carryback mortgage, because the seller is carrying back the mortgage after the mortgage or the original mortgage is paid off.
Does the bank has to be notified? Is there cases when the bank says we don't allow these things, or do you know?
Yeah, I've seen some scenarios, and people have to be careful because in some cases where you buy something on owner financing when the seller already has a mortgage in place, it can trigger what's known as a due on sale clause. Yeah. So people do have to be very careful. But again, that's why I targeted a lot of older landlords, because I knew that they had their properties paid off. Yeah,
usually the immigrants, they like it all paid off. They don't like mortgages.
That's right. I'm an immigrant too. You can't forget. I like paid off real estate.
Yeah, me too. Until I met the owner of my office. Stino. He was with me on the podcast. If you scroll down to Facebook, you'll find it somewhere. He actually taught me that mortgages are good for you. You leverage the money. You don't need to pay it off. Even when you're young, you don't even want to pay it off. You want to buy as many mortgages as you get as many mortgages as you can. And now it took me a while to get it. But now I get it, now I don't want that money, I don't want to pay it off. I don't want to refinance and pull the money. Unless maybe if I pull the money, I want to put it back into another deal, I don't want to put it in the pocket or the other way, you pay it off with your own cash. You start paying off the properties and use it for another deal. Yeah, so that took me a little while, but yeah, you're right. So a lot of older landlords, they have theirs paid off, so that's easy to structure. There's no mortgage. Because I always thought, if there's a mortgage, there's the bank. You have to let the bank know, because if they find out for some reason that there's someone else buying it without them knowing, they can call the note due, right? Yeah. They can just notice due. Gotta pay it off. Yeah. So, okay, well, one quick thing. So, your plans on buying, I was going to ask you the plans on buying, but you already told me that you're focusing on the other areas. You in 2020, you didn't buy anything in Illinois, right?
No,
too
I
high.
didn't.
Price is too high.
I don't think I bought anything in Illinois since 2017. So, I don't plan on buying anything in Illinois anytime soon, just because, and I'm not saying there's not money to be made. There's plenty of money to be made everywhere, I've got friends who own properties in California, and they're doing well, but for me, for my investors, at the end of the day, my job is to look out for them, and I'm going to find them the best deals I possibly can. And if it takes a little bit more work on my end to do it, to travel, then, so be it. I'll definitely put in the work. So, 100%. I don't think I see myself investing in Illinois.
You're probably going to move soon. You're probably going to move to another state soon if you start investing heavily.
Maybe not. I like Illinois. You know what I mean? A lot of people want to get out of here, especially people my age. They want to move to Texas or the Carolinas or, to Nevada or something like that. But, honestly, I love Illinois. I think we have the best food in Chicago. I travel a lot. I've gone to, even just the last 12 months, I think I've gone to 12 different cities. And major cities, like Boston, Miami, dude, let me tell you, Chicago has the best food. I don't care what anybody says.
It's you're Korean, right? So is there a lot of Korean?
Yeah.
A lot of Korean here or no?
Yeah,
People-
there are, especially if you go to like the northern suburbs, so if you go by like, Northbrook and Vernon Hills and
Those expensive ones,
Glenview. Yeah, there's a lot of Koreans there. The Koreans and the Jews, they like to stick together, but for me, I have Korean friends that I grew up with, but my
Not that
mom
many?
always wanted me to have Korean friends.
Because
But,
there's like
for me, it's
probably like 100,000 Ukrainians here. Maybe
Yeah.
even more. Maybe
Yeah.
even more. There's
sure.
probably like 1 million Polish,
Right,
from
right,
Poland. There's a lot of
absolutely.
Poland. So, but that's a part of the reason I'm here. Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
Ukrainians. I feel like home almost like in Ukraine, but I'm still get America, so I get best of both worlds. So I can't see myself moving, from but who knows? But again, it's
Yeah.
very comfortable for me to be here because there's a lot of Ukrainians and
Yeah, I love Ukrainians, man. I had one of my good friends in growing up, actually in middle school and high school, was Ukrainian, and him and I
Uh-huh.
love martial arts, so we would always train together and wrestle. But I love the Ukrainian people, so I'm glad to be here. This is
Well,
fun.
thank you. What's the maybe a good piece of advice would you say? Someone who is new, young, want to have a hustle and want to build a portfolio. What would you tell them? Drive around, call for sale, for rent signs, build a list.
Yeah. So, based on what the common mistakes I see a lot of young investors making is, I always tell them protect your downside and your upside will always take care of itself. I feel like one of the benefits of an older investor is they've seen a lot of things, they experienced a lot of things, and they know what can happen, and they know how human they are. They know that things can happen out of nowhere. Like the pandemic and COVID and all this stuff. But I feel like when you're a younger investor, you're starting out, you're so quick to want to just calculate what is the cash flow, and you just use the cash flow to deem it whether or not it's a good deal. And a lot of people, a lot of young investors especially, they don't know how to monitor risk. They don't know how to protect the downside and play defense and not offense. So for a lot of younger investors, I always encourage them, continue reading the books, listen to the podcast, listen to this show. This is a good show. Go to events and learn and shadow as many people as you possibly can, but also learn how to play defense in your business as opposed to just offense. And I think if people do that, I think a lot of great things can happen, especially with somebody who has a lot of time on their side.
What do you mean by defense? Like deleveraging, maybe not getting into too much debt. Maybe that what you mean. What do you mean defense?
Yeah, so understanding the risks of your business, so there's a lot of different risks that associate with real estate. You have financing risk where, you do over leverage a little bit too much. I had a conversation with my commercial banker who was actually in Chicago. He lives in the Chicagoland area. And I asked him, what happens when, the value of the building goes low and it's equal to the value of the balance of the mortgage. And the commercial banker said to me, if that's the case, we actually will call them and ask for enough capital and liquidity to where it goes back down to 80% loan to value, as opposed to
come up with cash?
keeping it there. Yeah. So if the let's say you got an apartment building that's worth $1 million, let's say the balance on the loan is $700,000. If the value of the building drops to $700,000, the bank will ask for enough cash to where the LTV, the loan to value ratio, will get back down to 80%. Whereas if you go, the value of a building is $700,000, the balance of the mortgage is $700,000, you're at 100% loan to value ratio. So, you do the math, that's about $140,000 that you got to come up with, or they're going to call the no due, And I asked them, well, what if they're paying on time every single month? The guy said, doesn't matter. We're going to call them. We're going to call the no due unless they can come up with the money. Tough luck. We're not taking the risk as the bank. So, that's number one. A lot of young investors, they need to understand that aspect of the risk and understanding how to play with equity. And I'm not against refinancing. I'm not against, because there's certainly good debt. There's definitely good debt that you could use to expand. But there's financing risk, there's relational risk, where, people were, a lot of young investors, they'll meet a contractor and the contractor will seem good in the beginning and they don't know how to build a proper relationship, or, they don't know what good questions to ask to see if that they're a good individual to work for. A lot of young investors that I meet, the mistake they make is, the first contractor or the first attorney they meet, they'll work with that individual just because they seem nice or they seem smart. And that's something that a lot of young investors cannot do, because, if you have a deal that goes south, it can cripple them for the rest of their career. It hurts their reputation. A lot of people don't want to work with them anymore. So, there's the relational risk, there's the finance risk, and there's a lot of risk out there. And even just sitting down and taking 15 minutes and looking at the deal that you're currently working on and figuring out what could go wrong, it'll do a lot of good. It'll save millions of dollars for that person.
Yeah, and it's hard a little bit for a new investor because they don't know what can go wrong. The older ones can calculate more because they know what can go wrong. But the new one, you're so optimistic, you're so excited about this deal, you think everything's going to work out great until it doesn't. And do you know Andrew Holmes maybe here in our market, Chicago? Andrew Holmes? Yeah,
Andrew, we know of each other.
Yeah.
I know he's more focused locally here in Chicago.
Yeah.
I heard good things. I heard bad things, but I've never met him personally. But I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's a good dude.
Yeah, I went to his couple of RIA events. Chicago RIA. He's focused only on single family houses, maybe duplex here and there. Only single family. I think he auction, sources, buying through auction and probates, stuff like that. But only. Only through like single family homes, which takes a lot of time to build your portfolio. I got a little portfolio, but all single units. So I want to scale, but with the prices right now, I don't know. The apartment
it's tough,
building,
man. I hear you.
It's the best deal I've ever seen is a 6-unit building for $650. That's the best I've seen with a good area. I mean, I don't know. There's so much. It's so tight. One boiler goes off, the year's cash flow goes off. So it's a little tight, but again, everybody who enjoyed the show, please comment, put a plus, give us some likes and pluses and comments. Again, buy the book, or you can get it for free. It's free. Just pay for the shipping, couple bucks. Also go to quackbrothers.com, research that. There's got a lot of content over there. YouTube, got a big following over there. We got 200,000 subscribers. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so we're at 120,000, so hopefully this year we'll hit 200,000. But if people want to get the book, it's 0 to 75units.com. And we actually also have a free class on owner financing. It's a 3-hour class on owner financing I put together. If you want that, just go to freeownerfinancingcourse.com. Again, we try and give as much free stuff as we possibly can, because I know when I started, I didn't have a whole lot of money. So if I can help myself 6-7 years ago, then I'll be a happy man. I'll go to sleep happy.
Yeah, and also focus on people and solving problems rather than properties, because that's the key. You deal with people, not with properties.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks so much, Daniel. It was a cool video. Nice show. Thank you so much. We'll stay in touch. And thanks for tuning in. Everybody who watched, thank you so much. And I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And Daniel, thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Oleg. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Українське незалежне радіо.